Hello collectors and space fans, I'm Jim Frangione and welcome back to another episode of Taking Up Space, the place where space history lives and where every artifact tells a story. If you're as passionate as I am about the history of spaceflight and collecting vintage space age memorabilia, be sure to click on the subscribe button and notification bell down below so that you don't miss out on a single episode. In this installment, we're going to highlight an artifact that comes from the personal collection of Apollo 15 command module pilot Al Worden. In my hand, I'm holding what is essentially a signed envelope. If that was all it was, it's very cool. It has the Apollo 15 mission logo depicted on it, it's been signed by all three members of the crew, and it's been postmarked on the day of the launch, July 26, 1971. While that much makes it neat, it may not make it all that unique. So why is it unique? Well, for starters, as I mentioned, it was owned by Al Worden, a member of the Apollo 15 crew. And as we can see by looking at the backside, that much is certified by Al Worden himself. But why he had this first day cover in the first place and why it's numbered is what makes this artifact downright fascinating. Accompanying this particular signed first day cover is a letter that describes its significance as an insurance cover. An insurance cover. What's that all about? Well, going to the moon was and still is a very risky business. So risky, as we can see here in Al Worden's own words, that getting life insurance that most families have to cover them in the event that the primary breadwinner suddenly dies was not available to the most prominent people in America at the time, the astronauts. Sure, many of them were active duty military members who were assigned to NASA and they still had service-connected insurance benefits, but that wouldn't take their families very far if they didn't make it back from the moon. So the astronauts got creative, very creative, and they created their own form of life insurance to provide for their families in the event of a tragedy. What they knew for certain was that if they had perished and didn't return from the moon, these signed envelopes would be worth an awful lot of money, and that their families could sell them in order to provide the money that no life insurance policy could. So, understanding that this signed postal cover actually served as an insurance cover, it takes on a whole new dimension of significance. It's certainly different than the similar signed covers that look just like it. In fact, side by side, they're indistinguishable. And the Apollo 15 crew returned safely after what was arguably the most successful and scientifically significant mission of the program. Its value thankfully didn't have to skyrocket. But its backstory is what makes it so fascinating. With the letter from astronaut Al Worden attesting to its function as an insurance cover, it's a completely different animal that speaks volumes about the darker side of something that we generally view in a very positive light as an unbelievably successful program. And by and large it was. So much so that we often forget about the risks involved. Risks that we know from Apollo 1 and Challenger and Columbia are paid for with actual human lives, and at the tremendous cost and loss to their families, friends, and loved ones. As test pilots and engineers, the Apollo astronauts knew a lot about calculated risk. While most of their thoughts were certainly around mission success, as evidenced by these insurance covers, they recognized that the highly complex ventures can sometimes go sideways. As part of their mission planning, and the million and one things that they had to do to succeed, their families still remained very much top of mind, and in fact were baked into their planning. To me, that's the awesomely human part of the Apollo story that this artifact tells to me. Astronaut heroes, yes, but still husbands and fathers to their families. Amazing. That's the story behind the artifact for this installment. I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about one of the more human aspects contained within the history of Project Apollo. One last note, I had the pleasure of meeting Al Worden a few years ago. One thing I can tell you for certain was that he was an engaging and an animated storyteller. If you'd like to learn more about Al Worden and the daring mission of Apollo 15, I would highly recommend that you purchase and read Al's book, Falling to Earth. Co-written with Francis French, it's an amazingly well-written story of Al's life and exploits as an astronaut. Trust me, it's a keeper and one that you'll want to have on your shelf for years to come. I've included a link to purchase a copy in the description down below. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you again for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up down below and feel free to let me know your thoughts by dropping me an email at jim.takenupspace@gmail.com. Until next time, collectors and space fans, keep your head held high and keep your eyes on the stars.